Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be talking about Starbond CA Glues and some important uses that you should know about for them for making guitars. For starters, superglue is very effective to help hold pieces down if you're having trouble working on them, or if they're too small to be held down in the ways we normally would. So for example, if you're working on a guitar, that's fairly easy. If I want to sand this, I can just set it on something, some bench cookies or something like that, or I can clamp it down, no problem. But if I'm working on the back cover for the guitar, that gets a little bit more complicated. I can't really hold this down and run a sander over it. That's not going to work too well. And I can't clamp it and do that either, because then I'm taking away a significant amount of space that I have. So we can use CA glue to sort this problem out. Let's take a look at how. This is a fairly common trick that a lot of people use for things like routing templates, holding them down, but it can also be used just to hold pieces down if you're carving them, or in this case, sanding them. What you're going to need is a little bit of masking tape and your glue. Pretty straightforward. If I want this side up, I'm going to put a piece of tape on the other side and make sure that it's on there really good. I may use something like, for example, the back of a razor blade or even a screwdriver to burnish that down, make sure it's stuck well, and I'll do the same on my surface. Just pick where I want that to go. And now I'm going to run a thin line of glue. I'm going to use the medium Starbond glue for this. I'll spray some accelerator on here, and we'll stick them together, and this will be held down and ready to work on. Let's get to it. All right, so we'll get our glue ready here by attaching one of the heads to it. I don't need one of the small wicking heads for this particular task. I'm just going to run a small line of glue here. This stuff is very strong, so it doesn't take much. Take my accelerator and spray a little bit on here. And then very simply match up the tape to the other tape and stick it down. I'll give that a few seconds to set, and then this should be ready to work on. Alright, so that's been about 10 seconds. That is on there firmly now, and I can go ahead and sand it if I want to, or work on it in some other way. There we go. Another good use for CA glue is grain filling. We can use it to stabilize woods, we can use it to fill dents, things like that, or we can just use it to fill grain in wood in general. So the piece of wood that I was just working on, which is still stuck to my table here, is ash. I'm going to go ahead and do some filling work on that, and in this particular case, rather than using one of the clear glues like we just did, I'm actually going to take some of the medium jet black from Starbond. You can use the accelerator on this as well, you don't have to. We're going to fill the grain on this little piece, and we're going to use a razor blade to spread this out. Let's take a look. So we're back to our part here, still held down by the glue trick that we used. I'm going to use some medium thick black Starbond. This allows us to accent the grain and also to target it if we want to. So if I wanted to, for example, just fill some of the grain in black, I could do that. But that's not what I'm going for here. I'm going to grain fill this whole piece. So we'll get a little bit on there. It shouldn't take much. We can always add more. And we'll take a razor blade and do our grain filling work. Just be careful you don't get this all over the place, because it's glue and it will stick. Clean our tool off occasionally here, avoid sticking that to anything, and you'll see how little it took to finish this job. And there's just one tiny little area left, which we will get done at the same time. And there we have it, our grain is filled. Now that's going to take a moment to dry, probably a few minutes, but if we're in a hurry and we want to speed up the process, we can just use a little bit of Starbond accelerator, and that'll set in a few seconds. Now that's actually an easy way to get a fairly smooth finish, but it does raise the grain a little, so once we've done that, we can always come back with a piece of sandpaper. Sand off the excess and leave our filled accented grain underneath. Alright, last topic of the day, fretwork, installing frets. A lot of people use superglue for this. It's a good option, and it's what I like to use. Now there are a couple different options for it, because frets have tangs, and it depends a little bit, in my view, on how you install them. So when I say frets have tangs, I mean this little piece that comes out the bottom that goes into the slot. It's got little teeth on it, and if you curve your fret a little bit, you pre-curl it, and you install it with a hammer, those will dig in sideways and hold your fret in a little bit better. If you just press it in with a press, they'll still hold in, but not as well. And so there are a couple options here for using superglue to install a fret. I'm going to get this bent, cut a piece off, and I'll show you what I mean. So I can, now that this is bent slightly more than the fretboard, I can put this in here, hammer it into place, and then install a little bit of superglue at each end, which is what I will do if I'm installing it with a hammer. Or I can run a very little bit of superglue into the channel here, into the fret slot, and then press it into place. That's the option that uses more superglue, of course, that's to keep it in place. You still don't want much, because you don't want it to be impossible to take out after. But that's what I'm going to show you right now, and I'm going to be using the Starbond Super Fast Thin Glue for this one. So for this particular task, we're not just going to attach the normal head here because we need to get into such a fine area. We are also going to attach one of the wicking heads that come with all of the Starbond glues. Very thin, very easy to guide. We're going to wick a little bit into there, and then because I don't have this on the neck, I'm not going to use my regular arbor style fret press. I'm going to use my little hand fret press with a flat bottom. We'll get that fret pressed into place. So let's get our glue in place, the whole purpose of this video. And again, we just want a little bit. You're going to notice it's actually going to do a little bit of grain filling if you're using a more porous wood as well. That's fine. Get our fret positioned in here. And quite simply, get it pressed in. Now let's make sure we're lined up. There we go. And give it a good squeeze. And there we have it. One fret installed. Need to shave a little bit off of this side, but she looks pretty good. So now that the super glue is there, this won't just come out on its own. I didn't use a ton of it though, so you should be able to yank it out with a set of fret pullers if you want to, without doing too much damage to the surrounding fretboard. Another trick for that doesn't relate to super glue is make sure you take a little triangle file and shave a little bit, which I did on this one, to create a bit of an angle on either side of the fret slot.